Today we are asking the question, did the Iron Age ever end? My name is Moray. Welcome to our non-AI generated history channel where, well, we create history content without AI. So when you're in school and you're learning about the ages, you see a timeline, and you see the traditional 3-age system. We're taught that history moves in a straight line, but the reality is a timeline glitch. Ooh, conspiracy time. Timeline glitch sounds like a funny term, I think.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
The end of the Iron Age ended in different parts of the world, and also wasn't a strict date on a calendar. Not that they had calendars really back then. It was a technological and cultural wave that swept across the globe. And, spoiler alert, it wasn't when we stopped using iron, because we may still be in an Iron Age. Iron Ages in different parts of the world ending meant different things. So, one thing I'm really interested in as someone who's into Gallo-Roman history and the Romanization of the Celtic people, because I love Celtic history, is how the Iron Age ended here in the UK, because Julius Caesar recorded Celtic history and he was the recorder of the Celtic history. Anyway, in today's video, we're going to be looking at this timeline glitch and how different cultures cross the finish line in regards to the Iron Age ending. Is this 3-age system still accurate? What is the Iron Age? So the Iron Age represents the final technological and cultural stage in human development, prehistoric human development. The Stone Age is represented by the manipulation of lithic materials. The Bronze Age is defined by the alloying of copper and tin. But the Iron Age represents the mass production of tools and weapons derived from smelted ore. And this transition from bronze to iron is a fundamental shift in the accessibility of power and productivity. Bronze production was really fragile. It needed long-distance trade networks to bring together copper and tin. And copper and tin don't come from the same geographical proximity. But iron ore, it is one of the most abundant resources on Earth. So I find it really funny that the Iron Age only really ended when human literacy started to flourish, and written word literacy, right? But anyway, iron really flourished and the masses got iron implementation, aka they got access to tools, and peasant farmers were able to farm. Armies were able to equip soldiers. Another element from transferring from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age was the necessity of the technological advancements needed to process iron. Copper and tin can be smelted at 950 degrees Celsius, and that's achievable in standard pottery kilns. But pure iron needs a lot. 338 degrees Celsius. That's what iron needs. So the mastery of these temperatures needed centuries of innovation in furnace design. So we have spoken about the transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, but we need to talk about the timeline glitch and why the Iron Age brought the written word. This timeline glitch of the Iron Age ending in different parts of the world. We're going to talk about the countries when and how the Iron Age ended. Let's talk about the Mediterranean catalyst. In around 1200 BC, the late Bronze Age had a systematic collapse. And this was the fall of the Hittite Empire. The Mycenaeans collapsed. And the New Kingdom in Egypt collapsed. This Bronze Age collapse was a set of interlocking events. So profound droughts, earthquakes, and obviously internal peasant revolts, and the incursions of the sea peoples. The sophisticated trade networks of people who supplied bronze disintegrated, and regional populations were forced to integrate. Blacksmiths changed their techniques to learn how to process iron ore. And in the Near East, the Iron Age was not planned. It was a survival strategy. So from the Near East, the technology of ironworking changed, and it spread like a slow wave. In Anatolia, smelting was pioneered by the Hittites. As early as 1500 to 1300 BCE. It was actually a closely guarded state secret. Ooh! Ironwork started to dominate Greece and Italy between 1100 to 1000 BC, and local cultures recovered from this collapse. And in Northern Europe, the spread was further delayed by the effective bronze trade routes. Actually, the Hallstatt culture, what we now know as like the early Celtic culture, it reached its ironworking peak in 800 BCE. And Northern Europe and Scandinavia, they didn't enter their Iron Age until 600 BC. South Asia, evidence from the Ganges Valley suggests that iron working began in 1800 BC. It wasn't the dominant technological material until the painted greyware culture of 1200 BC. And in China, ironworking did not become widespread until 600 BC, during the spring and autumn period. In the Near East, if you ask an archaeologist, the Iron Age is set when the Achaemenid Empire and the rise of the writings of Herodotus start to come up. In China, they had written records during the Bronze Age, where in Britain, the Iron Age is seen to have ended when Julius Caesar wrote about the Celts, because apparently, according to Rome, the Celts didn't keep their own records. In Mesopotamia, written records predated ironworking for centuries. So the concept of the Iron Age isn't a very good metric anyway. This transition, like I said, the Iron Age ending means different things to different people. And also, we need to talk about the imperial erasure of prehistory. So for example, something I feel very passionate about is Gallo-Roman culture and the Romanization of the Celtic people. The Roman conquest of Britain was the ultimate example of this phenomenon. The Celtic tribes of this period were really sophisticated Iron Age cultures, and they possessed really advanced techniques, coinage, proto-urban centers, and we lacked a record. The Roman conquest introduced Latin, centralized bureaucracy, historical documentation, but historical documentation in the Romans' words, not the Celts. And the Iron Age is said to have ended in Britain because it dragged the Celts into the Roman historical record. Not only have we spoken about how the end of the Iron Age is defined by different metrics, but also the Iron Age ended in different times around the world. Is why one region remained in the future, the end of the Iron Age, while its neighbor remained in the past. Their technology is often influenced about geographical conditions. So Eurasia's east-west axes allowed for the relatively easy transmission of crops, animals, and knowledge of metalworking. But if you look at the geographical position of somewhere like the Americas and sub-Saharan Africa, and this created barriers due to the different climate zones, the lack of domesticated animals like horses and oxen who could transport, and the lack of a tin trade meant that the knowledge to develop iron smelting was low. Andean cultures, for example, they developed bronze working by AD 200. They already had obsidian, which provided Mesoamerican warriors with sharp edges, need for war. And they didn't need metal-tipped plows. They didn't need them. In sub-Saharan Africa, there was a unique counter-narrative. They moved from stone to iron. There was no 3H system. This rapid shift, you see this in Moreau, Africa's first industrial center, shout out to Ammon Irenas. An abundant coal and iron ore were enough to fuel the continent. They didn't need this 3H system. And they introduced iron making across southern and eastern Africa, and allowed the establishment of great kingdoms like Great Zimbabwe. Lastly, we're talking about political structures in the Iron Wave. In ancient China, the Great Wall of Yan was not merely a defensive barrier, but it was a military and technological economic network. They had to develop iron technology to construct the wall. Now, we need to talk about the negative climate impact as well of the Iron Age. Once populations began dependent on iron tools to increase agricultural productivity, it entered an unfortunate feedback loop. Iron tools allowed for the cleaning of dense forests, a deforestation cycle, and the smelting of iron required vast amounts of charcoal, leading to further deforestation in 1000 BC. Indian farmers, they were clearing the forests for the Ganges to make room for rice paddies. And across the Mediterranean, the demand for fuel furnaces was strip mining the timber of the coastal regions. And this created a material energy trap, which created complexity and urbanization. The end of an Iron Age in a region wasn't actually that great for the population. Whilst the Romans gave the Celts civilization, they brought the negative consequences of urbanization, increased mortality risks for children, high levels of dental and infectious diseases, and a shift in diet towards marine resources that didn't actually improve overall health. This transition from a prehistoric lifestyle to a historical urban one was a double-edged sword. It brought infrastructure, but also environmental and social strain. Did the Iron Age actually end? Historians use the term information age to describe where we are now. But we still live in a place where we use iron and steel. And some historians argue that we are still in the advanced stages of the Iron Age. But The Iron Age has so many different metrics in regards to when it ends, in what country it was, and what ended the Iron Age. It's impossible to keep track. These Iron Age blacksmiths, they laid the foundation for the modern world that we live in when they discovered that heating iron with charcoal, aka carbon, created a stronger, much more flexible material. Some historians argue that the Steel Age began in the 19th century with the invention of the Bessemer process and open heat furnaces. So really, has the Iron Age actually ended? If we define the term Iron Age by its dominant material, we're still living in the Iron Age. Any skyscraper you go into, any house you go into will have steel as a material. So we're still living in a late advanced Iron Age. However, when some archaeologists believe that the Iron Age ends with written history, maybe they're correct. Maybe we have moved into an information age instead, rather than an advanced Iron Age. We name our ages after the technology that feels the most relevant. Okay, thank you for watching this video.